Okay, welcome to week 6 of the Mount Silver Draft League. Didn't play week 5 yet. Gonna get that done soon, hopefully. I'm not sure the order the videos will go up in, but this week, being week 6, we are playing against Dom and the Cleveland Escavaliers. You can see his team. I always mess this up. There. And we are currently sitting at 2-2, because again we haven't played week 5 yet, with a +2 differential, so a pretty important matchup. Hoping to come out with a victory. Just gonna go through the sets really quick. I got kind of a compressed schedule this week. So first off, we have a Zera Aura. Zera Aura here, set details, basically the speed is enough for max speed Mega Lopany, and then we have max attack with just the remainder dumped in defense. We're running the Bulk Up, Shookaberry, Drain Punch, Acrobatics, Plasma Fist. This set, the idea behind it is to hopefully catch Excadrill either outside of sand or towards the end of his sand. Get a Bulk Up off. Shookaberry guarantees that we survive. And then from there, we can do a lot of damage to his entire team with Drain Punch, Acrobatics, and Plasma Fist. We pretty much hit his entire roster with that set of moves. I guess the one exception to some degree is Golurk, but Golurk isn't very good overall. It's not a horrible Pokemon, but it's not very good. So Lele gets hit pretty hard by Plasma Fist, Lopunny, Acrobatics, Excadrill, Tyranitar, Drain Punch, Vaporeon, Plasma Fist, Roserade, Acrobatics, Rotom. Can't really do much to me. I guess Will-O-Wisp or something like that. Togekiss, Plasma Fist, Liepard, Drain Punch, Reshiram. Reshiram we don't hit, so we kind of have to clear Reshiram out of the way before we can do much with him. But that's basically the idea behind the set. Suicune here, Scald, Roar, Toxic Protect. This is kind of my sand check. Max physical bulk, a little bit of speed creep, just in case something was speed creeping my Suicune. And Scald and Roar. Roar to prevent setup from Excadrill. Setup Excadrill, if I don't get burns, can potentially break through my team. I considered Sleep Talk, Calm Mind on here over Toxic Protect. So I considered essentially, I think it's Crocoon is the one. It's Scald, Rest, Calm Mind, Sleep Talk. The only problem with this set is an SD Excadrill can break through it, which would be really bad for me. If I didn't pull a Scald or I didn't pull, essentially the appropriate moves to ensure that I don't get killed by that. So I ended up going with this set. Leftovers just preserve longevity. Not very complicated set. Crocodile here. This is essentially a lead. I thought about Choice Scarf, but the problem is that Lele is very likely to be Choice Scarfed as well, so that didn't work. Thought about a more offensive variant, but again, I just keep dying to Lele. I can see Lele being a pretty strong lead against me. Considering I don't have amazing resistances to Lele, I think Magearna is probably my best one, and Magearna has a really bad matchup this week due to the Sand Core and just really not being able to do too much. It kind of loses to a lot of stuff. So ended up going with this interesting set. This is a heavily specially defense invested. Basically this can live Moonblast from non-specs, non-modest Tapu Lele. And so the reason that I didn't, because I could EV to survive modest Lele, I would just need 144 HP, 252 special defense to survive modest Moonblast. Pretty much always going to die to Choice Specs, but I didn't think Choice Specs would be the bring for my opponent. I assumed Timid Scarf because it outspeeds Zera Aura by a few points, so it seemed like a really good bring against me. So the idea behind this set is essentially, it's my rocker, which is nice. Intimidate is nice to kind of, neuter the damage output from Excadrill under sand. And then Z Irontail will kill Lele. So ideally, I lead this against Lele, and it goes for Moonblast, I kill Lele, and I don't have to deal with Lele the rest of the game. Kind of be the ideal outcome. Earthquake knockoff just kind of round out the coverage. Earthquake's really strong against his team. It hits a lot of his team members neutrally. I think the one exception to that is Rotom and Togekiss, just because they're immune. But everything else is hit neutrally or super effectively. So Earthquake's really strong. Knockoff's good to potentially catch, whatever on the switch in. There's a lot of things that don't want to lose items, a lot of choice mons that don't want to lose items. Togekiss could switch into an Earthquake. Togekiss could also be hit by the Steel Z. So this had a decent matchup. Mostly I just wanted to guarantee that I could get rocks up. Was kind of the thought behind it, and then hopefully a lure for Lele. Hopefully keep it in and kill it, because my opponent would likely think that Moonblast is an OHKO and that I can't kill back with anything. Next set is Crobat. Brave Bird, U-turn, Roost, Defog. Just a kind of max attack, but somewhat bulky and enough speed. I think this speed here gives me 317 is enough for the base. What is that? Is that base 90s? 95? Can't remember. 317 is, sounds like base 110 modest or something. I don't remember offhand. Went with Black Sludge also to get some recovery, Roost just to preserve. I needed to really keep rocks off the field for Ho-Oh in order to allow it to do any sort of work. Went with Inner Focus to prevent flinch shenanigans from Togekiss and Megalopony. Could go with something like Rocky Helmet for Megalopony, but then it doesn't hit Togekiss. I figure Inner Focus is probably my best bet to kind of ensure that I can get damage, I can get defogs off, that type of thing with Crobat. Next set is Ho-Oh. This is another defensive pivot. This is heavily physically defensive. Doesn't do very well against Excadrill Tyranitar, likely because of their rock coverage. It can fairly comfortably insofar as it takes like 75%, but it can survive rock slides from Excadrill. The coverage is Brave Bird, Sacred Fire, Toxic Recover. Generator is really nice to kind of pivot in and out. Leftover is really nice for just passive recovery. Sacred Fire kills Excadrill unless they have a really bizarre investment. Toxic and Recover just to allow me to stall out certain Pokemon, specifically Vaporeon. Should be able to take care of Vaporeon unless it's like heavily speed invested and outspeeds me, or we can get a Toxic off. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I needed a defensive pivot for Lele and for some of his other Pokemon, and this is probably my best bet for that. Last Pokemon here is Flame Orb, Guts, Conkeldurr, with coverage Mach Punch, Knockoff, Facade, and Protect. Protect's there to ensure that I get my Flame Orb activated. Also stall sand turns. Mach Punch kills most Excadrills. It also kills Tyranitar. Knockoff gives me a way to remove items on Pokemon pivoting in. Facade's just good for neutral coverage. And like I said, Protect's there to stall turns and guarantee my Flame Orb activation. I also considered Earthquake. I also considered like a banded EQ on Ho-Oh. I thought ground coverage is just really strong against this team, and Ho-Oh's got enough attack. So banded EQ looked really, really good if it could force switches. The only problem is that it didn't always force switches, which is a problem. Excadrill is probably speed invested, so it would outspeed some sets. Like I would want to run Adamant to pick up a lot of damage calcs, a lot of damage rolls, but then if they happen to run Jolly Excadrill for whatever reason, that could put me in a really bad spot. Tyranitar could survive some attacks depending on its investment. So there's a bunch of iffy things that made like banded EQ seem somewhat dodgy, but I did think it had a really good matchup against this team. And I also considered EQ on Conkeldurr. So the overall team plan, hopefully lure in Lele and pick up a kill early. Getting rid of Lele kind of opens up the door for a lot of my team, especially if it's a Scarf Lele that would outspeed Zeraora. Zeraora actually does survive Psychic in terrain from Timid. It's kind of like, I've talked about this in previous builders, Zeraora has that funny habit of surviving any essentially not super effective move. It just always seems to live. The bulk of 88, 75, 80 is just enough to survive most non-super effective hits. So it can survive, but it much appreciates Lele being gone so that it has a speed advantage over all the other Pokemon that my opponent can bring short of Scarfers. So hopefully Crocodile can remove Lele. That would open the door for Zeraora to win late game. Crobat's keeping rocks off the field, giving me some momentum. Suicune is my check to sand sweepers, specifically set up Excadrill. Set up Tyranitar to some degree as well. Like a DD Tyranitar could do some work. Ho-Oh is another defensive pivot, kind of a Pokemon that could stall out certain Pokemon, specifically things like Vaporeon with proper prediction. If I get the Toxic on it, Scald's not going to be able to take me down unless it's heavily specially attack invested, which I don't think it would be. And then the physical defense is really nice for Lopunny and things like that. And then Wong's kind of just a breaker. If I can get it in position, again, Lele being gone is really nice for Mach Punch, but if I can get it in position, it can start to do quite a bit of work. So hopefully kill Lele early, and then from there, kind of wear down the team between Suicune and Ho. Break with Conkeldurr while I'm keeping rocks off with Crobat, and then late game sweep with Zera. I guess we'll see how it goes. Okay, so onto the battle here. Kind of just sitting here at team preview. Most of the team is what I expected. The one exception is Togekiss over Mega Lopunny, which isn't the worst thing by any means. Mega Lopunny felt like a pretty large threat. It had good damage output. It makes Conkeldurr quite a bit worse, but Conkeldurr is always going to have trouble without a stab, basically outside of terrain. I had a Poison Z Crobat set for a bit, but that's, would have been good. Makes me feel a little bit better about having Inner Focus on Crobat initially, because it makes it very difficult to get kind of flinched down. I can get a lot of damage off on it if it's like a Scarf, Togekiss, or something like that. As far as leads are concerned, I'm kind of just going with my original plan. Crocodile lead into Lele kind of sets me up in the position that I wanted to be in, which is potentially getting a Z Iron Tail off, which can, can kill. It can take out Lele, and that opens the door for a lot of my team. So I ended up just leading Crocodile. Worst case scenario, I can get rocks up against everyone else on his team. Vaporeon would be a little bit weird. Not sure exactly what I would do against Vaporeon. I'd have to pivot out to some degree. Not sure exactly what I would go into. So I lead Crocodile, and Dom ends up leading with Tyranitar, which makes sense. This is his rocker. It gets sand up. It lets him start going with Excadrill. So this lead makes a lot of sense for him. In this position, I can trade rocks. I mean, trading rocks overall isn't great for me. I'm more susceptible to rocks than my opponent. I have 2 flying Pokemon and 2 Pokemon hit neutrally by it. My opponent has, 1 flying Pokemon, 1 fire Pokemon, and then Pokemon that resists. Rocks are not in my favor. But, I don't want to Earthquake into Togekiss. I want to just keep an even board state to some degree. He is intimidated, so I'm not too worried about any offensive threats that he could go for. There's Fight Z, things like that can kill me, but, the corollary is true is that I could have Fight Z and I could kill him, and that'd be a pretty bad turn 1 for him. So I kind of make the only play that guarantees that I get something out of the turn, which is rocks. And my opponent makes a good play and matches my rocks, so this is disadvantageous to me for sure. Rocks are better for him than they are for me. At this point, there's a bunch of different switch-ins my opponent can make. He could go straight into Excadrill, but that's really aggressive. Earthquake is somewhat likely here. He can go into Lele. He can go into Togekiss. He can go into Lele and Togekiss are a little odd. Excadrill's a little odd. Reshiram's a little odd. Ultimately, he goes into Vaporeon, which, now that I'm watching the replay, makes a ton of sense. This is his best mid ground essentially. I just go for the knockoff because that's my mid ground as well. Clears an item from Togekiss, clears an item from Lele, clears an item from Reshiram. Barring like a Z Togekiss, which I wasn't super worried about. And I didn't think he was going to go into Excadrill in a million years there with ground weak to ground weak against ground Pokemon. While the Pokemon he had was intimidated, I felt like I had a pretty strong position there. So I make the play to go for the knockoff. I clear the leftovers from Vaporeon, which is really nice. Getting rid of its passive recovery is huge. In this position, I don't want to stay in. I don't want to take damage on Crocodile because I know that my investment can take Moonblast from Tapu Lele. After rocks, it's a roll, but it's strongly in my favor, so I kind of want to keep that up. So I don't like a lot of my swap-ins. I don't want Zero to take damage. I don't want Crobat to take rocks and a Scald. That's more damage than I'd like it to take. It needs to kind of stay alive to be able to clear the field of rocks. Kinkelder, I'd rather it not be toxic, or I don't want it to take damage. It actually takes a decent amount from Scald. I always forget how much special attack Vaporeon ends up having. So the safest play to me feels like Suicune, and so that's the play I make. And this ends up being a really bad play because my opponent makes a good play and they go for the toxic. And so this toxic landing, after I pivoted away from like a rest sleep talk set, this is huge. Toxic is going to put me on a timer, and with rocks up, that timer, I can't reset that timer very easily. So in this position, I'm kind of in trouble here. I've basically allowed my best answer to the sand mode for my opponent's team to be crippled, and essentially be whittled down to nothing because I don't have any active recovery on Suicune. Definitely not with sand up. So at this point, I have Vaporeon down to 50%, which is really nice because I do need Vaporeon weekends to be able to break through with either Kinkelder or ho or even Crocodile. So here, I have no damage output against Vaporeon. I can Scald, but it's almost certainly water absorb. So I'm just gonna heal it. If it stays in, Scald's a horrible play. If it switches out, Scald's pretty good, but that doesn't seem great. I'd like to get it statused. If it's substitute, I'm in a lot of trouble. So this turn was really hard. This turn I thought about for a long time, and I didn't feel like I had any great plays. I ended up just going for the Toxic, and luckily it landed. My opponent went for Wish. Here, I don't want Vaporeon to recover, so I end up just firing off a Roar, just to ensure that it doesn't receive the Wish. It can damage me or whatever. It's bad because I don't think there's another play here that's very good. Ho is going to take a ton for rocks. Kinkelder isn't going to be able to do a lot of damage. I just don't want Vaporeon to get back up, so I'm going to Roar. Vaporeon actually, I guess it roared me as well, predicting a switch. No, I'm just faster. But the only reason I would be faster is if it roared too. So I guess we both roared there, or it could be Whirlwind or something like that. I don't remember if Vaporeon gets that. I send him into Reshiram, which isn't the worst thing. This is kind of neutral overall. He gets the Wish, but Vaporeon doesn't, so essentially the rock damage is neutralized. And I'm in another bad position here because as much as I would like to switch out Suicune into Crocodile or something like that, I can't take damage on Crocodile because I need it to be able to hopefully kill Lele. I can't hard switch into any of my other Pokemon. Ho-Oh would be at 50%, could die to some coverage on Reshiram, whatever its set is. Kinkelder is going to take a lot of damage, even though it is pretty specially invested. I guess I didn't talk about the EV spread on Kinkelder. It was a really bad EV spread, actually, because I had Drain Punch for a while, which is why I invested in Special Defense. But then I ended up not using Drain Punch, and so I should have invested in HP instead. Horrible. It is a rushed week this week. So in this case, I'm just roaring. I don't want it to set up. I don't want it to substitute. If it wants to kill me, that's fine-ish, because Suicune is basically useless now, which is horrible for me. So I actually fire off a Toxic. That's right. So I Toxic, assuming it would try and set up, or it would just attack me. I was not anticipating substitute. So in general, I wasn't anticipating substitute from his team. I thought Infiltrator Crobat would somewhat disincentivize that. That's why I ended up going with Inner Focus. I was more worried about Fake Out and Flinch hacks than I was substitute. So the Toxic here, and I'm feeling really, really bad right now. His Vaporeon's low. That's about the only thing I've accomplished thus far. My Suicune's dead, which is my best check to Excadrill. And he's got rocks up, which are bad for me. And now he's got a sub up against, Suicune, who's basically dead. So at this point, I feel like I have to roar. I have to get him out here. I can't let him stay in, behind a sub. So I shuffle him out. He reveals Roost, which is good to know. It makes me think he's like a bulky set. I roar him out into Tyranitar, which is fine. One thing that I didn't pick up in the battle, which ended up coming in pretty big later, is I didn't notice this was Smooth Rock Tyranitar. Those 2 turns there with Suicune, I was thinking so much about like, how do I manipulate out of this position without getting so far behind that I just lose, that I did not notice the Sandstorm continuing, which would have been really nice to know later in the game, because I do make a play that I only made because I thought Sandstorm was basically in. So I died to the poison, and this allows me to get Conkeldurr in. So Conkeldurr here, Mach Punch kills Tyranitar, barring like Choppleberry, I'm pretty sure. So Mach Punch is available. Lele could come in and block that and then put me in a really bad position, so I don't necessarily want to go for Mach Punch. Sandstorm's about to end here, so Excadrill doesn't really seem like a play. Also, Mach Punch hits that really hard. So I think I make a Facade play here. Yeah, on Vaporeon coming in. No, I go for Knockoff again. That makes sense. So Knockoff guaranteed to kill Vaporeon. Well, put it in range of anything. And it got guaranteed damage off. Also cleared an item from Lele if it came in on the Mach Punch. Togekiss if it came in on whatever that I went for. Excadrill I didn't think was coming in. Cleared an item from Reshiram. I guess if T-Tar stays in, that's a really bad play, but it didn't seem very likely. So Knockoff seemed like a decent kind of mid-ground play. Vaporeon comes in. I get my Flame Orb, which is nice. Mach Punch finishes off Vaporeon. I didn't want to take any unnecessary damage there. So Lele comes in here. It felt like Lele had to be scarfed. Like, I didn't know if it was going to be Modest or Timid. I had a suspicion it would be Timid just to outspeed Zeraora. So I'm assuming it's Scarf. This is where Protect is kind of nice. I get to scout what move it goes for. It locks into Moonblast. Again, I'm assuming this is Scarf because I kind of am far enough behind. I have to make some assumptions here. Get Crobat in. Moonblast doesn't do very much to Crobat. Again, assuming this is Scarf, I go ahead and clear the rocks. He gets Tyranitar in here, which, immediately threatens to undo what I've accomplished clearing the rocks. Still at 50%, which is good health. U-turn does some nice chip. This allows me to bring Crocodile in to get the Intimidate off. So Intimidated with rocks gone, I think this is a pretty good position for Crocodile. Opponent just gets rocks up again, which is smart because you keep Ho-Oh low on health. And this is another really tough turn. So Earthquake kills from here. Togekiss is a problem if it switches in. So I don't want to do that. Again, I want to not lose health on Crocodile if I can avoid it. Earthquake kills Excadrill, so that doesn't seem like a very likely switch in. Does a lot to Reshiram. It does a lot to Lele. To me, this turn felt like the turn that you go to Togekiss. Dom, if you're watching the battle, if you want to go through your thought process here. Again, I didn't realize this was Smooth Rock, so I thought there was only 4 turns of Sand. I didn't feel like you wanted to throw away Tyranitar. Again, if I realize you're a Smooth Rock, maybe I think about it a little bit more, and I'm like, oh, he's got 7 turns. He kind of wants to get a free switch in. Maybe he'll just sack Tyranitar here. And this does end up being important later. So I'm predicting the Togekiss to switch in, so I just fire off my Steel Z. And I knew it killed Tyranitar, so it was a fairly safe play. I guess Reshiram kind of punished it to some degree, because it doesn't do very much to Reshiram. But now he gets an Excadrill. Here I do die to Ground Z. I don't actually remember. I didn't calc Steel Z, which is what the set ended up being. Ground Z killed me, which was a huge problem to me. So I ended up switching out here, predicting the Ground Z, because everything else seemed really bad for my opponent. I imagine since you went for Steel Z that Steel Z did kill Crocodile. I guess I could do the damage calc really quick. Yeah, it's heavily in your favor. I mean, you don't know my spread at this point, and you could be adamant. So it looks like it's very heavily in your favor. So I predicted ground Z. What does Steel Z hit on my team specifically? I guess it's better neutral damage overall, so that makes sense. So anyway, back to the battle. Here I'm predicting ground Z. It's the only thing that for sure killed Crocodile that I was calcing. Ironhead killed Crobat, so I thought about Ironhead, but I didn't think about Steel Z. Ironhead killed Crobat, and I knew I had Regenerator on Ho-Oh as well. I just didn't want to get hit, and a rock move seemed basically impossible here. So I go to Ho-Oh here, basically to kind of pivot around and waste sand turns. So the other thing I was thinking here basically was, okay, I'm thinking there's 2 turns of sand left, because again, I'm not realizing Smooth Rock, which is horrible on my part. I think I can go into Ho-Oh, pivot back to Crocodile, get an Intimidate off, and then the sand is over, and I get Regenerator, so I basically don't lose very much to rocks. Rocks plus, you know, what I'm assuming is going to be an Earthquake or a Ground Z or something like that. So it was a bit of a flex on my part in terms of like a play, like a prediction, which, you know, I've already gotten my Suicune in trouble. This is my other defensive wall, and it's, you know, at 19% now. So my position here is basically horrible. Compound that with the fact that it's 5 turns of sand left, and I'm thinking it's only 2. So I pivot back immediately into Crocodile to get off the Intimidate, neuter some of the damage output. The Rock Slide comes out. I figured there was going to be rock coverage on this Pokemon. Togekiss comes in, and this is where I go for Earthquake. So the Togekiss switch-ins, I'm 0 for 2 on the predictions here. Again, I assumed that you would stay in and throw off an Earthquake. It wouldn't kill me, and then I could kill you with Earthquake. When I switched in Crocodile, I had realized that sand was going to end, basically. Or I thought that sand was going to end also, so that didn't work out for me. So get the prediction wrong here. I don't have the Steel Z anymore. So here, so if you're not damage count. So my set isn't very offensive. No, but Berry. I'm like, what the hell? So this has over 50%, so it's a 2-hit KO, and since I'm heavily specially invested, Air Slash doesn't do that much. Keep doing that. And I can also see that so that position, let's go back. So the position with Togekiss here, I basically want to get damage off on Togekiss. I don't know its set immediately. I guess here I do see the Sandstorm and the Leftovers recovery. So at that point, I am actually 282 speed, so you could outspeed me if you're max speed. Togekiss's speed tier is kind of weird, so it didn't seem like there was much need to invest in speed. This is to outspeed non-boosted base 91, so Rotom if it wasn't timid or jolly or whatever. So I figure that I am faster here, and I throw off the Iron Tail, and of course this does nothing to Excadrill, and the Sandstorm turns are really coming in handy here for my opponent. So you basically cycled out and cycled back in to get rid of the Intimidate and still have 2 turns of boost here. Really well played overall by Dom in these Sandstorm turns. He's made the most of them without sacrificing a hell of a lot. And the Togekiss predictions have been really, really good. So here, I basically need to sack something. Conk seems the most useless. Mach Punch is my only stab option, and with Lele, that can just instantly be neutered, basically. And Crocodile, at this point, I'm starting to realize needs to be healthy. Crocodile is the reason that Lele can't just lock into a Psychic move and do a lot more damage to my team. Fairy moves, I have 2 resists for Fairy. Psychic, I have 1 immunity, and the rest are, 2 are weak and 2 are neutral. So Crocodile becomes really important for the rest of the game. So I pivot Crook out into Conkeldurr. I know that I can Mach Punch here for a significant amount of damage. I know my opponent knows that, so again, go for the knockoff. For how little Conk did, I guess I made the proper predictions. I don't know. Like, King Keldor I thought would end up doing more because I thought I'd be able to remove Lele. And Mach Punch in Sand really shut down, offensively checked both Excadrill and Tyranitar. So the knockoff's nice. I clear some leftovers, but I end up just dying here. This does give me a free switch in, and Crobat is really safe here, even if it's just like a suicide to clear rocks, which is, I definitely want rocks cleared, especially since my opponent no longer can set them. So that frees up Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is no longer dead. Ho-Oh was dead until I cleared rocks, so getting in this position was vital. I do clear rocks. Reshiram comes in. I just don't want it to sub, so I'm just firing off Brave Birds. I'm basically not going to let it sub. Here's where, if I was Infiltrator, this just dies, and I'm in a much, much better position. At this point, my opponent didn't know if I was Infiltrator or not. I haven't been in position to be flinched. I haven't been in position to break past a sub. So I guess it's somewhat prediction on my opponent's part. He might assume that I'm a very bulky non-offensive set. The 44% damage here, shows that I can break through if I was Infiltrator. Unfortunately, I'm not. So I end up having to fire off the Brave Bird to just keep that substitute down. And Dom, again, makes a good play with the Roost. So here, I need to kind of make a prediction. I end up predicting that he's going to Roost again, assuming that I Brave Bird, so I can get Crocodile in, which could then threaten a lot of damage with Earthquake, depending on his set. Again, I'm not very attack invested, but I can at least stop this. I can prevent him from getting a sub, which is really important to me, because behind a sub, I have a lot of trouble being able to kill it with anything. So I switch in Crocodile here, predicting another Roost for my opponent, and my opponent does Roost, so I got that prediction right. In this position, Earthquake, from the calcs I was doing, I think I was showing just the damage, the standard damage on a Reshiram set. Just whatever popped in there was like 60 or so. So he wasn't going to get up a sub, which is kind of what I was concerned about at this exact moment. And if he was timid, it was going to have a lot of trouble killing me, because at this point I'm at 81%. Yeah, 81%. So this is a really key turn, and this is where some of the luck started to flow my way. So I fire off the Earthquake. I'm faster. I don't know if I was able to confirm that beforehand or not. Get a lot of damage off. My opponent goes for Blue Flare and misses. So this is obviously huge. I think we found out later that based on his investment, I survived most of the time. I think a burn put it towards like 30 or 40% that I might have died. Probably a little lower than that. But I would have been really, really low on health, which, having Crocodile low on health is bad for the reason I mentioned earlier, that I need Crook in to put Lele in a position where it can't just spam psychic moves. So the miss is horrible. It's not good. So I go for Earthquake again. Again, the Togekiss makes the prediction correctly. Iron Tail didn't kill. Knockoff. I don't think Knockoff killed. I mean, we can check, I guess, really quick. Knockoff was a roll. Yeah, so I probably wasn't going to go for that roll and risk him roosting. I didn't want him to get healthy again. So Earthquake again, another good play by Dom, recognizing that I probably had to go for Earthquake there. It comes in, I get off my first Iron Tail, I do connect, 75% accurate. It gets off a Toxic, so at this point I'm on a timer, which isn't good. I don't want to be on a timer, I want to keep Crook healthy. My opponent does have enough health left to get up a substitute. I was not expecting... I guess with Toxic, Roost makes a lot of sense. It hadn't attacked yet, so I didn't really know it's set. I got up Rocks to ensure that I got damage off on Reshiram, and also ensure that if Togekiss pivoted out into Lele or into Excadrill, assuming that I'm not going to go for, an Earthquake against Togekiss, that I'd at least get something out of the turn. So now I have Rocks up for the rest of the game. Roost makes this difficult because Iron Tail obviously isn't going to kill after a Roost. I basically switched to Ho-Oh here because Togekiss isn't a threat to Ho-Oh, and I can get some recovery. My opponent Roost, I think again I was predicting the Roost. I wasn't predicting a double Toxic. A double Toxic would have been an amazing play, but this allows me to pivot in with Regenerator and then to pivot back out and get Regenerator again. So basically the idea here was to get Ho-Oh healthy enough to be able to take on Lele. just with this pivot, and you only got the 25% back from Roost there. So I get leftovers, I get Regenerator twice, bring it back out with Crocodile. I don't want Ho to get Toxic, so Toxic ends up landing on Crocodile's already Toxic. Iron Tail does 49%. Defog clears the rocks, and here I'm just going to go for another Iron Tail. So I actually don't know your set. If you EV'd for Iron Tail on Togekiss, that's amazing. Stop being Babiri Berry. So against the standard set, it's 54 to 65. Let's like assume you are max HP. It's 45 to 54. So it's possible after what? Yeah, leftovers too. So this has it as a 2% chance to 2-hit KO after leftovers, which probably makes some sense. I crit the next Iron Tail, so it didn't matter. It didn't matter the roll. It mattered very much that I crit. Without the crit, I probably have to lose Crocodile, and then you can just spam Psychic. Spamming Psychic or Psyshock, which is what you ended up having, which I think is a good bring because Ho-Oh is much more specially defensive, so I think Psyshock makes a ton of sense. You definitely kill Crobat, for sure. You do more damage to Zeraora, and you do more damage to Ho-Oh. So Crocodile not dying is huge, and the only reason Crocodile didn't die is because of the crit. So again, between the Blue Flare miss and that crit, those were two monumental moments in the game. Here I'm gonna save Crocodile, again for the exact same reasons I mentioned earlier, is that Crocodile prevents Lele from locking into a Psychic move for the most part. Especially with his remaining board state, Crocodile can switch in and just Earthquake and guarantee a kill, so long as Lele's locked into a Psychic move. So I bring in Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh takes nothing from Moonblast. Here is another prediction with Ho-Oh in against Lele. Sacred Fire did a lot of damage. It also hit Excadrill hard. Killed Excadrill. Brave Bird did a lot of damage to Lele and killed Reshiram. So this one felt like a 50-50. And again, I made the wrong prediction. I think it's weird because Dom, I think, played better than me and got unlucky, and then that ended up in being a really, really close. Because I felt like every prediction between the Crocodile, Togekiss, some of those were a little bit more forced. Like there's 3 scenarios where it was Crocodile in and Togekiss either did or didn't switch in, and I think I got 2 of them wrong, and then one of them was like my hand was forced. So another prediction right for Dom here going into Reshiram. Brave Bird killed Reshiram, and then from there you have to go back out to Lele, and maybe I sat Crocodile at that point, but then I come right back into Ho-Oh, and I probably win 3-0. So Reshiram was the right play. It was really your only chance of winning, so maybe I could have made a more aggressive prediction there. Sacred Fire does nothing. It's quad resisted, and I'm not attack invested. You get the Roost off, but I miss a Toxic. So this opened the door back up for you to some degree. I didn't know at the time, but you ended up having I think you ended up having Toxic on this set too, and so no substitute. So here I just don't want you to get a substitute up, so I just start firing off Brave Birds again. You hit your Toxic. My Brave Bird takes it down to 10%. So I'm not quite doing 50%, so I can't outstall you here. I assume that you're going to Roost here, so I keep you low in case you went for a switch or something there. I don't know exactly what I was thinking there. You Roost again. You can't sub, so I get the Toxic off this time. This position is actually advantageous for me because I have Regenerator, so me switching out gains me health, whereas you do not. At this point, I think I switch out into Crobat because Crobat's no longer necessary. Crobat doesn't really do anything. Yeah, so I just go ahead and basically sack Crobat. You Roost. I'm just going to get off damage here. I think I just go for the Brave Bird. Do I crit again? Yeah, I crit here. Solid. You Blue Flare, which is fair. So that crit obviously helped me, so that would have done, what, 42? So you'd be at 40 something health, which means if I go into Ho-Oh, I have to Brave Bird. But in this case, I can go to Zera, and everything from Zera kills you at this stage. I obviously don't want to set up here. Zera lives everything from Lele, so at this point, I'm just going to pick up the KO. I'm going to click Drain Punch in case you go to Crook or to Exca on Thunder, on Plasma Fist. Go back out into Crook. If you go for Moonblast, that's fine. If you go for Psychic, that's also fine because I pick up a KO. That was the safest play. I think once Crobat died, I had the end game solved in my head, basically. If I force Lele to lock into... So if it goes for a Psychic move, obviously Crook survives. Crook can EQ and pick up a KO. If it goes for Fairy move, Crook dies, but then I can get in Ho-Oh, and Ho-Oh kills with Brave Bird. It also does enough damage with Sacred Fire to put you in range of whatever Zera wants to go for, and you can't 2-hit KO me with Moonblast ever. It does like 15%. So barring like a Sacred Fire miss at this point, like the end game solved. So I go for Sacred Fire here. You make the switch out into Exca, which I think was your only play, to allow you to switch to a Psychic move. Exca dies to the Sacred Fire, and then you bring Lele back out, and I need to just get damage off here to ensure that you're in range of any of Zeraor's attacks. I know Zeraor actually does survive any attack from here. Ends up surviving Psyshock pretty well, barring crit, so I could have been crit at the end of the game. So I just try and get damage off here. Psyshock does 40, which is considerable, but I do have a lot of defense investment. And you actually live on 4. I'm just what that roll was. Again, I wasn't very invested. I assume that you're just basic Scarf. So 72 to 86, and you were at 88. So I don't think this roll mattered for anything. I'm just kind of curious for my own. Yeah, so you're basically guaranteed to survive that. So I just needed the damage, and then from here, I'm not going to hard switch into Zera or anything, but I do bring out Zera, and pick up the KO. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that didn't go your way at all, Dom, and so that always sucks. I think you made a lot of good plays pivoting around with Togekiss against my Crocodile. I think your team build was really good. I think it did a lot of things that were very frustrating for me that I just didn't have great answers for. The Blue Flare miss on Crook, I think, was probably the biggest thing. A couple other crits were pretty nice for me. Crobat crit, especially on Reshiram, I think was nice. The Crocodile crit on Togekiss, you actually didn't have leftovers, so that one was a roll. I'd have to look at your set to know for sure. But against max HP, it looked like it was like 40. I think we looked at 46 to 54. So 49 was a low roll. So the next one, getting the 49 into the 51. I mean, the crit removed any chance, so it still sucks. Yeah, I guess. And then other than that, like, I just didn't end up. I didn't end up bringing the right sets. Rest Suicune would have done much better since you weren't set up Excadrill. I'm curious what your last move was, because I guess we only saw Rock Slide, Iron Head, Earthquake. So if it was SD, then maybe it was the right set. I just threw away my Suicune. So I don't know. It was a really close game, a little hacksy, in my advantage, which I think the last match against Adamant is kind of up in the air whether. I think it would have changed the end game. It would have made it close, but I think I still had it. This one, I think I did need, most specifically, the Blue Flare miss to pull out the W here. So got a little lucky. Good luck to Dom. I think he's played well the first 2 weeks in the league, and it's really nice that he's jumped in and helped us finish out the season. I'm expecting him to do really well. I think he outbattled me for sure this week. Yeah, hopefully I'll get my other battle done at some point. We'll be caught up, and then hopefully have a full week to prepare for the rest of my battles the rest of the season. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I'll see you guys around.